Well, hey there, friend. In this episode of Thunkable X tutorials, you're going to learn all about the real-time databases, real-time listener. Well, hey friend, if we haven't met, my name is Darren and welcome to Thunkable X tutorials. Today we're going to be learning about the real-time listener that allows you to update a value inside of your app every time it is updated inside of the database. So it's not based on an event in your app, it's based off when the data value is changed inside of the real-time database. So a little bit of background at where we are in this series. We're creating an app where you can log in and add websites where you can then store your username and password. So far we've added in this authentication, the sign-in component. We've integrated with the real-time database in Firebase so we can save data, read data, create data, update data, delete data, all those good things on the series. And today I want to show you just a little bit of something extra that I think is really cool. And it's that real-time listener. And I think I'm going to do things a little bit out of order of what I thought about before because I want to provide you with the value of the real-time listener really quickly. So let's jump into that now. So on the home screen here of the app, I've added in a little label where you can see the number, the pound, or the hashtag sign, whatever you call it. It says number, passwords saved. So what I'm thinking here is, you know how websites, some of them will show like, 1 million users served, or I think even McDonald's does this, like 3 billion Happy Meals sold or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. I want people, when they load up the app, they can see how many passwords are being saved, or how many websites, authentication, username, passwords are being saved inside of my app. So what I want to do is store this number inside of the real-time database, and then on this screen, go ahead and show how many passwords are saved, show that count. And then to add in the listener is I want to show that number, and that number be updated every time it's updated in the database. So here we are in the real-time database. You can see I already have a branch here for passwords with all of that data stored. And so now I want to start a new branch or folder, whatever you want to call it, for the total value. So total, and we'll add the value of 5. And we can press add. So here we now have a new element called total, and it's storing the value 5. So now let's go through the process of reading that and displaying it on the login screen. So I already have a few blocks here, but what we want to do is whenever the screen starts up, we want to go ahead and grab that value. So I'm going to create a function, and we're going to call it, and what this function is going to do is it's going to go to my real-time database. It's going to get the total value. So I need to type in the text of whatever that folder is, or that key to that element that we want to get, so total. And that's going to return either an error or a value. So we'll say if it's not an error, then we will go to this label passwords saved and update that value, the text value, with our value that was returned from the real-time database. So we'll grab a join block, add another item option, add in the value that was returned, and then we'll do space, passwords, and then saved. If there is an error, then we will display that error. So I have a helper function that is called display warning, and then we'll just throw the error there, and that'll show the user an error if there is an error. And now the last thing we want to do is actually call this function whenever the screen starts. So we'll come to functions, get total saved, and we'll do this before anything else happens. Go ahead and collapse this. So when the screen starts, we'll get the total saved, and then we'll do some other stuff for the login. So I just started up the app, and you can see here an alert, or the error was shown. It says permission denied at total. Client does not have permission to access the desired data. Now, you might be freaking out at this point, but I know why this is occurring, and I can show you how to adjust this. And this will only occur if you're using the Firebase authentication, the sign-in component. So what's happening here is I'm not actually logged in, and I'm trying to read data, but I'm not logged in, so I can't access that data. So you can see here in my Firebase rules, I actually have rules that say I have to be authenticated in order to read and write. So I'm going to go ahead and update these for now to make this a kind of a quick fix. And we'll say read and write is true. So now that those are set to true, that means anyone can read and write to my database. I don't have to be authenticated. So now when we come to the app, if we look at the home screen, you can see here it says 5 passwords saved. So now I want to go through the process of adding that listener so that when the value is updated inside of the database, it is shown within the app. So the first step to this is using the add listener block. So we will go to the real-time database and grab the add listener block. We'll do this after get total saved. And all we want to do is add a listener to the total value inside of our database so that whenever the total value is updated inside the database, it fires and lets our app know. We will account for the error. So we'll say if there is an error, we will display the warning. So now that we have a listener on that total value, we need to do something when that value is changed. So we'll come to the real-time database and grab when real-time database data changed. And so for this, all we need to do is just redo what we did before. So we'll update that label with whatever the value is that's returned. So you can see here when the data is changed, it will return a value. And so all we do is put this value right here. And so now let's open up the app. You can see here we have 5 passwords saved. If we go over to Firebase, go to our data, and let's actually update this value. Let's update it to 10. Enter. So now it's updated. You can see right there on the screen, it updated on the screen. So if we update it again, say 15, boom, so 15 on the screen. So now the real-time feature, the real-time listener is working. So our app and the real-time database are communicating, and this is really powerful because you're able to update the data in your app without having to actually trigger off an event with a button or anything. It's pretty cool. So that is the basics of using the real-time database listener. And if you want to stick around for a little bit more, I'm going to show you how to update this value whenever a new password is saved inside of my app. What I think will be really interesting for you is we're actually going to get into some advanced rules or some advanced security features, because I want only authenticated users to be able to update their passwords and read this data, but I want anyone to be able to read this total value. Anyone, meaning they don't have to be actually authenticated or signed in. So I'm going to show you how to add security features on each of the branches inside of the real-time database. So here on my password screen, I want to increment that count every time a new password is saved. So whenever they click this button, I want to get the value that is already stored, the total, and then I want to update it, increment it by 1. And the little tricky part here is I only want to do this if it is a new password. And I know it's a new password if the user has not selected a website that's already existing on this page and came to here. So let's go ahead and add that logic in the blocks. So I'm going to create a placeholder function here that will update just in a moment. So I'm going to call this increment total passwords. And then I want to call this function every time the save button is clicked. But I want to do a little check before I do that. And I want to say if not site selected. So what this does is it only fires off this function if it's a new password. And that's enough for that one. I'll go ahead and collapse that to get it out of the way. All right, so now let's work on this function. So the first thing we want to do is get the value that is in the total branch. So we'll do get, and we'll type in total here. And let me actually grab this little block here and collapse that. All right, so if there's not an error, or if there is an error, we'll throw the error. If there's not an error, that means a value is returned, and we want to do something with that value. Well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to save it right back to the real-time database, but add 1 to it. So we'll come to the real-time database, we'll grab the save block. The key that we want to save to is the same one, but the value we want to save is we're going to be adding 1 to the value that's returned. And then if there is an error, we will throw that error. So I will pop back over to Firebase here, and I'm going to add a new website password combination. And what we would expect is for this user, there'd be a new website added, but also this total should be increased. So I'll go to login and I'll add a new one. And I'll press save. And awesome, so you see here a new entry was created and the total value was updated. And so just to show you the power of this, I actually have the app up on my iPad here. And you can see on my screen, you can see 6 passwords saved. And so I'll add another one, save, and boom, you see as soon as I did that, it saved and updated that number. So hopefully you can see the power of doing all of this. It's very, I just think it's so cool that, you know, these two apps can communicate with each other through the real-time database. But there was that one thing we need to do. It's to readjust our security back to kind of lock things up a little bit more. So let me show you how I do that inside of the rules section. So I'm actually going to try and copy and paste this in here because there's no need for you to watch me type all of this in, but I'll kind of walk through what it does. So just for comparison, you can see here we have a passwords branch, and below that we have the user ID. So just take note of that, and then here we have that total value. And so here what my updated rules do is it takes the passwords, and then it goes down to that user ID branch, and then it adds security rules to that level down, that folder of the user ID. And it says you can read and write to this user's folder if you are logged in as that user. So if the current user's user ID is equal to this folder's user ID. So it does that for both read and write. And then what we do differently for the total branch is we say you can read anytime. Anybody can read from this total value, but you can only write to the value if you are authenticated. So if your authentication is not equal to null. So hopefully you can take this and apply it to your project, whatever you are working on. Well, hey friend, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was actually really fun for me to try and figure all this out and show it to you. If you did like this video, I would truly love to hear from you in the comments down below. I'm making these videos for you, and I would love for you to answer this question. How are you using the real-time database, and specifically, if you are using it, the real-time listener in your app? Just share it in the comments below. And that's all I have for you today, friends. Happy coding.